Thank you. Okay, now, committee members. Mr. Chavez.
Well, I like this discussion on the CTE, and I like the LOA's comments. I guess for Ms. Ramos from the Department of Education, what does the superintendent think the future of CTE is within education for high school?
Well, I think the superintendent is very supportive of CTE. He's always been a strong supporter of CTE and thinks it's incredibly important for all students in the sense of helping them gear toward where they want to be after high school, whether it's a career college or both, and college being, going to a community college to get a certificate all the way through a PhD.
If you had to give it a percent as far as young adults moving on to college or moving into a career out of high school, what do you think the percent would be?
The percentage of?
Like 70% of the kids going to college and 30% going to career, or
I don't
70%
know.
going to career and 30% going to college? I'm just wondering, since you're actually the leadership for education, your office, what's their vision that we're going to expect from you?
So I don't think that the superintendent has a vision of X percentage of students going to career right after or X going to college right after. I mean, that's not something he has set out. I think he'd like to see all students continue to college and career. With me, I have Lupita Acala, the deputy superintendent over instructional.
That's good. I thought I heard you say the superintendent had no vision. So.
Oh, he absolutely has. I think he's a strong supporter of the California new standards, which prepare all students for college and career readiness. And he absolutely wants students to have that choice. So all students should be able to be prepared for a college or into careers. Clearly, we have a current master plan where some students go into community college, some students go into CSU, some students go into UC. However, we need to re-envision that and look at what parents and students want for students. They want choices. They want students to be, coursework to be rigorous and relevant. They want to make sure that all students are engaged in the classroom. He has a very whole child outlook on students, but he absolutely is supportive of career technical education and more courses through our new our new state standards to be geared in a way towards how our current career pathway programs are, in which students are taking articulated coursework in K-12 and moving on to community college. I think he envisions that all students, even career technical education, because it's so technical, will require some sort of post-secondary education. So it's imperative that our K-12 system prepares students for that technical education, whether they go on to college or careers.
That's exciting, but I mean that's not very specific. From the Department of Finance and from the governor's standpoint, what is the Department of Finance or the governor's vision of percent of measurables? Because if you look at the LIO, they're saying super instruction, provide update CT-related accountable measures, strengthen accountable measures. So what's from the Department of Finance governor's position on the percent that would go on to college and percent that go on to careers?
Ian Johnson, Department of Finance. I don't think the governor has a set percentage in mind. I think our overall vision is that, long-term CTE would be provided through the local control funding formula and through that process, through the local control accountability plans, where each LEA is determining the appropriate amount of CTE offerings and the appropriate metrics to be developed. And so, that combined with kind of our evolving accountability system with evaluation rubrics where local districts, county offices, and the state will be able to sort of see on a district-by-district basis if their CTE needs are being met, and if not, what the appropriate interventions would be. That is very much kind of the overall vision that the governor's office has when it comes to CTE.
Ms. Ramos, back on our read ahead, we had that the Department of Education would administer the grant program, and in statute there's I don't know, what is it, about 5, 10, maybe 11 different considerations toward the grant. Is there any weighted issues, percents, or anything on that, or are they equally measured?
So as of now, we have not sat down to look at whether they should all be equally measured or some should be weighted more. It also talks about that there should be a group, including community colleges, State Board of Education, and Workforce Investment, that should develop the RFP that will partially make the decisions about how to weight those requirements within the applications.
So when are we going out asking for applications?
We would go out likely sometime. Probably my guess would be this upcoming next spring, so spring of 16, based upon the experience.
Late fall or winter?
Based upon the experience with Career Pathway
Late
Trust.
fall and winter of 15?
Yes. Well, late fall 15, likely. And if we find out by July that we've gotten this opportunity, then we prepare an RFA, we go out and let folks know about the application deadlines, and we're pretty savvy at it now, so either late fall or early winter we could go out with an application.
Well, if we're going to go out in late fall, winter, I'd assume then we would probably have to figure out, we'd have these criteria and how we're going to weight it or evaluate it when people come back. Because I assume before you put out with a grant, you'd have to have meetings with stakeholders, and this is how you apply for it, and these are the things we're looking at. So when you get to that, I'd be interested in that also. I think that this is a great opportunity for us. I really do. I think we can actually increase the pie, because in your requirements down here, you're talking about lead to an industry-related credential certificates, post-secondary, regional local market demands, ongoing industry and labor partners. So you're bringing a lot of businesses and local industries, and like my area would be biocom, possibly, and other districts they could be high tech or they could be agriculture. So it's a great opportunity to add a lot of strength to local controlled funding, and we always talk about college ready and career ready, which I'm 100% supportive of that also. But I think we need to put our money where our vision is. So hopefully you'd carry back to the superintendent. We would like a vision. I would like a vision that we're going to go to college, or we're going to go to careers, and we're going to put money into it. And I don't think, as somebody said, I think the LAO, this is not a one-time investment. This is a change as we see education. As I talked to a number of high school kids on Wednesday, they were up from Los Angeles. I said, all seniors were into college. I said, if we have the same educational system 10, 15 years from now that we have today, we could be a third world nation. So, and I mean that because of the poor graduation rates and school rates. What caught my attention really strongly was last week, the California Infrastructure Investment Bank was established. And basically, that is like moving hundreds of billions of dollars in investment in Asia and South America to develop new markets. And if we don't get our act together to be competitive, we could find ourselves in a tough place. And I think CT is a big component of that. So I'd like to see some objectives. We can increase the pie because I think industries need them. Every time I go to Silicon Valley or I go to Biocom, they're saying we need more employees. We need to have people come out of schools ready to work. And so they're willing to help. So hopefully when the grants come in, people are actually getting money from industries to provide resources to this whole educational environment, because it's not just us, the state, it's also them, the businesses, and they're making money, and they had to give us money to help train the workforce for the future. So look forward to that discussion. Love to have a vision on percent and see the how you're going to weight this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ting, did you have? No. Okay. Wonder if you could respond to the statement we Department of Finance from CDE, and we've heard from others as far as the match, and some people in round one got the Pathways grant, and so they may have a leg up on others providing that match number one, and whether or not it's sustainable as far as a match number two.
Sure. So when we were developing the proposal, we were endeavoring to provide as much flexibility as possible in terms of how the match requirement was met. However, we have heard concerns from CDE, stakeholders, and legislative staff regarding this issue. So we're open to considering revising our proposal to remove the Career Pathways Trust as available for the match.
Okay, and then on that same vein, as far, part of that is we're picking winners and losers in that process, and part of the overall approach, granted, I get what the intent is by having the competitive efforts, is that we do just that. We pick winners and losers, and if you're a student in a certain area and your jurisdiction isn't as on the ball as the others, you may be left out. So how do we grapple with that?
Well, this incentive grant is intended to provide funding for high-quality programs, but it also includes regional collaboration. So the hope would be that, LEAs can apply together, and hopefully we can capture more of those students that way, as well as the fact that, there is funding available in the local control funding formula for CTE without this grant as well. As was mentioned before, there's, the governor's budget has proposed $4 billion in gap funding this year, so there is significant resources available for CTE aside from this grant, but we hope that this grant will be able to provide high-quality programs and that regional collaboration will capture as many students as possible.
Was there thought at all about providing just a base level across the state, kind of across the board, and then having additional monies going available to a grant?
I think the administration would point back to the gap funding and additionally just to the local control funding formula overall. LEAs have the ability to fund CTE programs based on their apportionments.
Sure.
So
it's hard for that when they're trying to regroup from the hits in the last 5 years of the recession, though. Okay. Any more comments from committee members? So this item will also be held open until the May revision. And I think we're going to do these two together and then have public comment on the CTE pieces for the Pathways Initiative and issue number 3. Okay. Issue 4, CTE Pathways Initiative.
So as a part of the, Keith Nizam, Department of Finance, as a part of the administration's overall package of workforce development proposals, the reauthorization of WIOA and the Chancellor's Office's task force on workforce job creation and a strong economy, the governor's budget proposes $48 million to extend the CTE Pathways Initiative for 1 more year. As your agenda notes, this initiative has worked to create pathways and synergies between K-12 and community college CTE programs over the past 10 years, as required by SB 70 and SB 1070. Okay, thank you. LAO?
Good morning. Yes, still morning. Judy Hyman, Legislative Analyst's Office. The Sergeant has distributed a handout that covers both of these next 2 items on your agenda. I'll provide some brief background on Career Pathways program, followed by our analysis and recommendations. The purpose of this program is to improve career pathways, which are sequences of courses and programs, often beginning with career exploration in middle school, continuing with courses in high school that combine rigorous academics along with career preparation. The courses are articulated with local community colleges and 4-year institutions, and the pathway process typically involves regional employers, labor organizations, and other stakeholders to make sure that students are prepared for the workforce. The state's CTE Pathways program provides grants to consortia that must include at least 1 community college and 1 school district, working together to help regions develop not just the pathways themselves, but also policies and collaborations that will support these pathways. The current program replaced an earlier version that ran from 2005 to 2013 and provided nearly $400 million over that 8-year period. The new program was funded in 2013-14 and 2014-15 at $48 million each, and is scheduled to sunset June 30th of this year.
This is the last year.
Yes, this is the last year. And the Department of Education and the Chancellor's Office jointly allocate funding to projects. And just to give you an idea of some of the types of projects that they fund, one grant is to continue developing model CTE course lessons that are posted on a website for sharing curricula among providers. Another grant is for developing internships and other work-based learning opportunities for students. And a third is to provide professional development on best practices for CTE providers. As Mr. Nizam explained, the Governor is proposing to extend the grant program for an additional year, and our assessment of that proposal begins on page 4. As my colleague discussed in the last panel, providing additional categorical funding for CTE further fragments the state's workforce funding. The state's school funding approach, and increasingly its approach to post-secondary education, relies more on accountability for outcomes rather than dedicated funding that's tied to specific activities. Extending a categorical program beyond its statutory sunset would be a step in the opposite direction, and for that reason we recommend that you reject the Governor's proposal to extend this program for an additional year.
Thank you. Thank you. Community colleges?
Hi. Excuse me. Dan Troy, Vice Chancellor for the California Community Colleges. We're supportive of the Governor's proposal to fund the pathways for an additional year. I will note that the LEO indicated that that we're funding the program beyond its statutory sunset date. That's not true in a programmatic sense. That's true in a funding sense. There have been funds through the QIA program that were targeted to fund this over time. But the SB 1070 program still exists in statute and is, in fact, authorized, I think, through 2018. So we think this is a viable approach. In terms of the fragmentation of CTE funding throughout the state, we think that there is some logic to that statement. Our office, through the Doing What Matters initiative, championed by Vice Chancellor Vontan Quinlivan in our office, has spent the last 4 years during her tenure going through what we call a Doing What Matters approach up and down the state. And this is intended to address multiple issues. One of them is to make sure that in the era at the time when it started, when colleges were having their funding cut, CTE courses can be the most expensive, and in some ways, on a fiscal basis, they're the easiest courses to cut. So we were trying to emphasize the primacy of the need for those courses to the districts. Another thing that Vice Chancellor Quinlivan has done is to try to braid all the various resources that are available out there, whether it's Perkins, Pathways, et cetera, to try to have equivalent accountability measures for all the programs. That way we can best leverage the funds that are out there into more of a unified and unified whole. Further, she's tried to take a much more regional approach to this, so we have a less duplication of effort among competing colleges. With that industry that needs to set up a program at a college can quickly contact an industry navigator in that region and identify the college that is best prepared to take on that task. So we're supportive of continuing the funding for this program. We will note that, again, to address this issue of various programs out there that may or may not speak to each other, our board authorized a task force on workforce last November, which is currently meeting throughout the state for the spring. We're meeting with industry leaders, meeting with college personnel, meeting with K-12 partners. We're meeting with faculty to gain input on to come up with a coherent plan for the future and how career technical education can be emphasized and provided in the community college. And part of that discussion is what are the best ways to fund it going forward. So those recommendations will be brought forward in the summer. Is that correct, Deborah? Yes, in the summer. So I think that will be, if we can fund this program for another year, I think that will give the legislature some time to look at those recommendations and figure out a strategy as we move forward. But again, Career Tech is integral to the community college mission, and we're supportive of the funding today.
Okay. Thank you. Questions or comments from committee members? Mr. Chavez?
Just a quick comment. I really like what the LAO is talking. I think what she's pushing us is we need to make a decision where we're going with this before we start throwing money at it, and because it's over. So I guess the same comments I made to the superintendent instruction, I would go to community college the same way. Without giving that big speech, I'll just tell you, take everything I said there to you.
Okay. Well, we take it to our heart, and obviously our board is heavily engaged in the issue of career tech. That's why we have the task force.
So what's your percent then?
I think our goal is not so necessarily to find a percent. I think our goal is to meet students where they are and support them in the ways that best help them. If that's transfer to UC, we're there to help them. If that's to keep them in school and get them a certificate that leads them to a high-paying job, then that's what that student needs, and that's where we are.
And I think that's a little soft because I think when any enterprise has an idea of what their outcome's going to be. You know, we're going to make cars or we're going to make trucks. And when you're dealing with education, we're preparing people for different careers. And I think as an institution, you're not tracking anybody. You're just giving, you have a vision on what you're trying to provide. It gives relevancy of education to our economy. I think you, in your capacity in the UCs, and obviously the superintendent, need to do that. We could sit in an ivory tower and say we're going to educate everybody for whatever to fill, to have flowers and trees around. But the reality is it has to be relevant to what we're trying to do.
Appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you. One last question for the community colleges. Of course, the LAO has a different opinion on this than what the proposal is, and this is a one-year funding source. So what are the long-term plans of the community colleges to continue this work, and how will it be sustainable?
Well, certainly if the funds disappear, then some of these programs are going to disappear as well, too. There won't be support for them. But with the awareness that the funding authorization for this program wasn't permanent, we have tried to do some issues such as work with the Pathways Trust out there. Again, take advantage of existing streams of funding. So we have a teacher preparation program that's focused on STEM. The funding for that will continue through the Perkins grants. So we've tried to, where possible, affiliate the programs with other sources of funding that will continue in the future.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to go to public comment on the CTE issues number 3 and 4.